Welcome to Property Mama, episode 12, where I share all my adventures in real estate. I've been buying and selling real estate for nearly 30 years, and I have seen a few things over that time, let me tell you. If we've not met before, my name is Wendy Chamberlain, and I am a buyer's agent, buyer's advocate, and seller's advocate here in Melbourne, Australia. In today's episode, I wanted to share a little bit about buying and selling real estate because oftentimes people have to do both sides of that process. And one of the questions that I often get asked is it better to buy first or is it better to sell first? And it's an interesting question. And the answer I always give my clients is what is going to work for you? Because you're going to have to sort yourself out. Your situation is going to be very unique to you. Because depending on what a market is doing, sometimes it's better to sell first and then buy. Sometimes it's better to buy first and then sell. Because the issue with depending on what a market is doing is if you sell first and a market is going up, then by the time you have your cash and get ready to buy, the market might have outrun you and you may not have money to get back into the market. I remember years ago, a family friend had purchased a property in Albert Park, which is a very popular suburb in the inner bay side of Melbourne, and it's quite expensive to buy into. And she'd had some disputes with the neighbour in relation to the rear lane and access to the rear lane. And she had just had enough. So she said, you know what, I'm just going to sell up. I've had enough of this and I'll just buy somewhere else. Well, by the time that she had settled the property and had the cash ready to buy again, the market had moved and she couldn't afford to buy back into the suburb. And so she had to move to another suburb. And this is the danger. This is the thing that can happen is that where a market is moving and it's moving fast and it's moving up rapidly, you may not have the cash to get back into the market because it can leave in a matter of weeks by thousands and thousands of dollars. So it's a question that clients ask, and it also comes down to, do you have somewhere else to go? And this is one of the questions that I do pose to my clients, because if you sell your property and then we're helping you and trying to find something, you can't buy anything because you haven't found anything by the time it comes for settlement, do you have anywhere to go? And not everybody has somewhere to go. You may not be able to stay with friends or family, and certainly it might not, you may not know anybody, but the circumstances may not work. If you've got a family with children, you can't just necessarily go show up on the doorstep of someone else. It's just not going to work. It's not practical. So that's another thing that needs to be thrown into the mix there of what kind of thought process has to go into the order in which you buy or sell. Again, if you want to buy first while you're still owning a property, you may be having to take on bridging finance or finance to cover that. You may end up with two mortgages, and many people may not be able to afford that or service that. So it is a very personal situation, but it is a tricky situation because it is different for every single person. And it truly does depend on what a market might be doing at any given point in time. So we have worked with clients where we have needed to sell their property and buy them another property, and every single person is different. Every single person is different. And I remember working with one particular client, and they'd made the decision that they needed to sell their property and then buy another property. But trickily for them is that they didn't have anywhere else to go because they didn't have any family or local family or friends that they could stay with. So they had to have a particular length of settlement to allow them to move into their next property. And so we were putting this property to auction. Now, the market that we were selling at the time was patchy. And what I mean by that is it was a bit touch and go. As in, some properties were selling really well, some properties weren't selling well. So we were getting great numbers through our campaign for the auction. But we had one standout person that came to us, and the buyer was pregnant. So in my experience, when a couple is pregnant, they are very motivated to buy a property, and they want to get into a property as soon as possible because they have a pending timeline that they're going to meet. And it's not always controlled by them. The babies, as we know, can arrive whenever they want to arrive. So they made an offer before the auction that was over the odds. It was an offer that was very attractive because they wanted to make it attractive so that our vendor would look at it. And it was on a 60-day settlement. So here in Victoria, our settlement periods, the settlement periods are different depending on where you are. Even in the states of Australia, different settlement periods happen. So here in Victoria, 60 days is standard. We can do 30 days, which is quite a bit quicker. So 30, 60, 90, even 120 days, 45 days. These are all standard. You can have any date you want, really, for a settlement. And that's the date that actually the contracts are, the settlement happens where you take possession of the property. So you will be paying your money. The bank will be transferring the money to, if you're taking out a mortgage, you then have the mortgage over to you. And on settlement days, you go to the real estate agent, you collect the keys, and you now own the property. So this particular couple came forward and made a very attractive offer, which was well above anything else that we had been suggested by any other buyers coming through the property. And it was on a 60-day settlement. Now, our clients, because we were their vendor advocate and we were supporting them to sell the property, so we had given them all this information, and we said, given what is going on at the market at the moment, and given the level of interest in the property from buyers that have been coming through, because we had a very good campaign, but buyers were not at that price level. They were lower than that price level. We said, look, this is a really, really good offer and you really should consider it. So over the weekend, the couple that were pregnant that were looking to buy the property changed the settlement period, saying from 60 days to 30 days. So it became quite a short settlement period that they were after, because obviously they were pregnant and they had the timeline to meet. And we did strongly suggest to our client that it was a very, very good offer and that they should take it. And they said no. They said they wanted to go to auction. We had other buyers that were there that were interested, and they wanted to basically see how things played out over that time. Wow. It was a week or two more until the auction was going to take place. Over that time frame, one of those buyers, so the pregnant couple, they needed to buy a property. They couldn't wait to the auction, which is in 2 weeks' time. Their offer had been knocked back. So they said, if you're not going to take our offer, the 30-day settlement, we've got to move on. And that's what they did. They were no longer there. And I think sometimes when people are selling properties, they don't believe what buyers say. And I'm not saying buyers tell the truth all the time, because absolutely they do not. But this particular buyer was working with a buyer's advocate who was representing them. And they were saying what was going on with them and that they needed to buy because they had this timeline they needed to meet. Our clients didn't want to take that offer. And so that buyer moved on. They were gone. So we were 2 weeks out from the auction. As the auction started to get closer, one of the other buyers, one of the strong contenders that we had there, they changed their mind about the property, so they were gone. So by the time that the auction rolled around, we only had one of the buyers left in the mix. So through this campaign where we were getting good numbers, I'm saying that things being patchy, because this is what happens. This is one of the dangers of an auction campaign, where, because auction campaigns tend to run over usually 4 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks, where you have 3 weeks of open for inspections, and then you auction the property on the 4th weekend, on the Saturday on the 4th week. Through that time, buyers come and go. And so there is always the danger that a buyer that has viewed your home and likes your home, they're constantly looking at other homes. They always are. There's the danger that another home comes on their radar and they prefer that, and they'll go and buy that. or you have someone like the pregnant couple who have a timeline they need to meet and they can't wait. So they'll continue to look. And if they find something else, then that's what they're going to buy. And that's what happened in this scenario. And so come auction day, we had the one party that was left. The auctioneer went out onto the street. He did all his preamble, putting the property to the market, to the people on the street, going, okay, where do we want to start? Who wants to bid? And nobody bid. Nobody bid, which for a vendor, if you've ever tried to sell a house and you've run an auction campaign and you have the day and the auctioneer goes out there and nobody bids, it is soul destroying for the vendor when this kind of stuff happens. It's really, really disappointing. And so there were no bids on the property and the property got passed in. And we ended up talking to this one buyer that was there on the day, but they didn't bid, because this is the other thing. Buyers are not stupid. They turn up to the auction and nobody else is bidding on the auction. They know there's nobody else there. So oftentimes they won't even place a bid. They'll just wait for the property to be passed in, which means it's not been sold. So here in Victoria, the auction rules are that if you are the highest bidder, when a property is passed in, it effectively is passed in to you, and you have the exclusive right to negotiate the purchase for the next 15 minutes. So that's another auction tip for you, that if you do attend an auction and the property gets passed in, make sure it gets passed in to you, so that the agent will exclusively deal with you and negotiate with you without going to other parties. So oftentimes you may have seen where a property is auctioned, gets passed in, and people are hanging around to see what happens. That may well be one of the other buyers that was there, but it wasn't passed into them. So they're waiting to see what goes on, because after the clock ticks over that 15 minutes, the agents will go and speak to them, and they have every right to go and speak to them. So that's an important little tip for you there. So it ended up that we ended up negotiating with this one buyer, because that's all we had. And the property was sold to them, and it ended up being sold $35,000 less than what the pregnant couple were prepared to offer for the property. So I guess the important lesson is there, sometimes you do need to look at the opportunity that is in front of you versus rolling the dice and waiting, because over that time you don't know what is going to happen with a market, because we're not the ones controlling a market. And by market, it could be anything like a change in interest rates, a change in government policy, anything happening on the world stage with unrest. Who knows what's going on these days? So you do need to really seriously consider all opportunities in front of you, and there may be some inconvenience for you, but if getting the best price is going to be what is most important to you, then it is something to very, very seriously consider. The funny thing with that client, when we then were looking to purchase a property, they'd found another property in a neighbouring suburb and it was going to auction. We attended the auction, and the property got passed into us. There was one other person that bid, and then I bid, and I made sure that I was the winning bidder for it to get passed into us. I made sure that my bid was the highest bid. I knew that it wasn't at the reserve. It was not at the level at which the vendor was prepared to sell it, but I wanted to have the opportunity to negotiate it. So what happens when that situation comes about is the property gets passed into us, the agent comes into us, and you're invited over to us, and you're invited into the home to negotiate. So they'll generally put the vendor, the owner of the home, in one section of the property, and then you get invited into another section of the property. So you're not actually dealing with the owners at that point in time. You're still dealing with the real estate agent. and there's a conversation that goes on, and the real estate agent will tell you what the reserve is. They'll say the reserve is whatever it is, and then there's this negotiation argy-bargy generally that goes back and forth at that point in time. So this was going on back and forth. Now I went out to back to my car because I hadn't brought with me my folder that I use to have all my paperwork in it. So I said, just a moment, I've just got to go back to my car and grab the compendium. When I come back into the house, there's a really animated conversation going on because actually we purchased a property for this client before we sold the other one. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, because there's this animated conversation going on without me, which is just, it's not the etiquette. It's quite rude to do that. And I said, what's going on here? And the agent was pressuring my clients to list the property with him. We had actually signed an authority with the agent that was going to be the selling agent, so he didn't really have a shot at it as it was anyway. But that didn't stop him. He was pressuring my client to sign with him. And I said, no, look, you need to stop because we've already signed with someone else. He didn't believe me. I said, I can show you the authority if I need to. I can show you the authority. And so it's just really, really awkward. It's actually really rude as well, because I told him no. He was told no. My clients had told him no as well. And yeah, he wasn't taking no for an answer. So that was a bit unfortunate for him. Anyway, he kept trying and trying and trying. And I eventually said, look, you're going to have to stop. You're going to have to stop. But what I also found out was that my clients had said to, when I went out to the car, my clients had said to the agent who the selling agent was going to be, who was going to sell the property. And it turns out that back in the day, that agent got his start with the agent that was going to be appointed to sell the property. And I don't know, we have short memories, don't we? That somebody, and I don't know if he got his nose out of joint about the fact that it wasn't him. I don't know. But yeah, he's getting quite animated about that. Anyway, we negotiated to purchase the property. We purchased the property. He didn't get the listing because it was already signed up. He kept going on about it. Honestly, he kept going on about it. Why he kept going on about it, I don't know. Anyway, all right. So we worked with another client where we were buying and selling them a property at the same time. So again, they had the situation. They didn't have anywhere to go either. So we needed to buy them a property and sell their property. And for them to get the settlements to line up, we actually did it under an under a license agreement. So what a license agreement is, it allows you to occupy the property before the settlement takes place. What that means is that it's a legal paperwork, and you have the right to occupy a home as if it's your own. You don't own it yet because the settlement hasn't happened. And generally you're paying some kind of rent to the vendor who still owns the property, but you've signed the contract to purchase the property. So that was the scenario that was happening here. Now, we needed to, the incoming purchaser of their property also was selling their house. Now, this made it a little bit complicated because there were a number of moving parts going on here. So you had the incoming purchaser needing to sell their property. You had our clients selling their property and buying the other vendor's property. So effectively there were three parties involved, and everything has to line up. All the ducks have to line up for things to actually work. So we had the settlement date for our sale, and it lined up with the purchase date of the property that we were buying, and they were on the same day. They were on the same day. Now, which is not unusual to do. You can do one at 10 o'clock. You can sell and settle at, say, 10 a.m. in the morning. The funds arrive, and then you've got the funds there, say, for 2 o'clock settlement the same day. That's a normal process. So because our clients didn't have anywhere to go and needed to be able to move their furniture, we'd arranged under the license agreement that our clients could move into this other property a week early. So they'd already, so the settlement was coming up, and 1 week before the settlement was going to be happening, they moved into this other property. So they'd moved all of their items across because they needed to clean the house, have it available and ready to go. And so they were effectively had moved into the house they were buying under a license agreement, waiting till the settlement was going to happen. And then on settlement, they would be the owners of the property. But right now, the vendor still owned it, and they were living there under this agreement. All good. So settlement day comes around, and it was a Friday, and there was a problem with the incoming purchaser of the property we were selling. Now, what that means is that they had another property that they were selling. There were a few things in the chain here. They had another property that they were selling. Those funds they would then put into this purchase of our client's property, and then the funds that our client was going to receive from that sale, they would put across to the purchase of the property they were buying. Many moving parts. Well, the purchaser of our client's property had a problem and a delay with their sale, which meant that they requested and asked to delay settlement until the Monday. So then we have to ask for a delay to the settlement for the property we're trying to purchase. The rules are that where there's a delay, the vendor can seek penalty interest. So our client can seek penalty interest payment from the purchaser coming to buy their property. And then likewise, the vendor we're buying from can seek penalty interest because the property hasn't settled. Further to that, now, everything was being communicated through the solicitors. I was talking to the real estate agent who was talking directly to their vendor. So there was the channels of communication through the solicitors, legal representation, that was happening. And then myself and the agent were talking to everybody as well. So everything was being communicated. Now, the property we were purchasing, the son was selling it for his mother, I think, who had passed away. And so he was from the country, and this property was in the city, and he had come down and he was selling this property to take the funds. And the communication along the whole way was fine. Everybody was getting along, it was all amenable and so forth. And so the real estate agent was communicating with the vendor, who was the son of the owner of the property, or the person who passed away. So next thing, we receive a 14-day rescission notice, which is that it is a notification that you're no longer allowed to occupy the property because the settlement hadn't taken place. And it's just through many cats among many pigeons, because I'm speaking to the real estate agent going, what's going on? And he's like, I'm not sure what's going on, because he's been communicating this. I don't know if it was getting driven by advice from the solicitors, but it was just starting to get quite complicated and messy. But this just shows you our client didn't do anything wrong. This all came about because the person buying their property had someone at their end have a problem and let them down, so they couldn't settle on time. So because our client didn't receive their funds, they couldn't settle on time. And then the vendor we were buying off started to get antsy about that, and issue a 14-day rescission notice, which basically means that they're not going to sell you the property. They're going to take the property back. So our client had sold their property, moved in under a license agreement, needed to settle and buy this property because they had nowhere else to go. They had 2 young kids, nowhere else to go. So my clients are in an absolute state of stress going, what is going on here? What can we do? I said, well, they've said everything's fine. So the verbal that we're getting is that everything is fine, but then you issue a 14-day rescission notice, which indicates that legally you're saying everything is not fine. So I was herding a few cats, rounding up a few kittens through this whole process here. And the incoming purchaser was able to settle on the Monday, which meant the funds arrived, and then our client was able to settle the next day, which was the Tuesday. But obviously there were additional costs incurred because there were penalty interest and things that were paid or charged that need to be paid. Plus, then there was a rescission notice issued that the vendor wanted our client to pay for, so they wanted us to pay for their legal fees. So this all had to be bundled up and put through the pipe and put back to the originator of all the problems, which was the purchaser of my client's house. So it all turned out in the end that my client was able to buy their house and everything went through, I'm not going to say smoothly because that wasn't a smooth thing, but everything did go through in the end. And so they were very happy with their purchase. It just shows you that where you have many ducks lined up, every single duck has to keep in line. And when they don't keep in line, but this is what we do. As here we were the buyer advocate on the purchase, and we were the vendor advocate for the sale. So we had two hats on for our client, and we are making sure that we are tracking every single piece of the puzzle and that everything stays on track. Even when things are going pear-shaped, you still got to keep things organized and communicate and keep them on track, which is what we were doing and what we achieved. And we got the outcome in the end that we needed for our client, which was the sale of their property and then the purchase of their new home, bigger home because they'd outgrown the old home because of the two children that they've got. So if you need a hand selling a property, buying a property, if you're not confident, if you've not done it before, please let us help you. We're here to help you. We're here to support you. Let's get it done. Let's work together. We can help you buy your dream home. We can help you sell your current home, and we make it easy. That is what we do. That's what we're here to do. We're here to support you, and it's why I'm your property mama. Property mama came about because one of my beautiful first home buying clients called me her property mama because she'd not done it before. She was very nervous. She had no idea what she was doing. And I am here to support you as your property mama. That's what I do. So chamberlainadvocates.com.au. Reach out across our social channels, whatever your favorite social channel is, and let's have a conversation. Let's see how we can work together, and me and my team can support you too to sell your home, buy your home, whatever it is you need, bid at auction, negotiate your purchase. We're here to support you. If you've got any questions, please reach out through the website, give us a call, or just drop us a DM or a comment on our social channels, and we will get in touch. I do hope you enjoyed today's episode of Property Mama. I love sharing my stories, getting great feedback from people that you too are enjoying them. So I am so grateful for you tuning in, and I would love to see you again on a future episode. And I'll be sharing more episodes, more adventures in real estate with you soon. Have a great time, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye for now.